Come with me and have yourself a taste of my philosophy. You look really sharp. What kind of, is that just your laptop webcam?
You're so kind. Yeah. It's also the fact that I haven't showered in 36 hours.
Nice. That's,
Yeah.
people like that more than they acknowledge, more than they realize.
Yeah. I think it's also just, I'm in Mexico City right now, and you just have to keep moving constantly. So you're kind of in like observer mode. You can't tune out because you get run over
Oh
or
yeah.
someone will come up and rob you, you know.
Yeah. Maybe, I guess. I don't know. I didn't have that problem in Mexico City, but maybe there's just
No,
something
no.
something
No one's
irresistible about you.
nobody's been threatening. Although last night my buddy and I were walking home from seeing some jazz at like 10:30, so not too late in not a dumpy neighborhood, and a police car was following us for a bit, asking us like, "Hey, where are you guys headed?" And then they stopped and came out and like, "Do you have drugs?" I was just like, "Dude," and we were both talking to him in Spanish, like, "No." And so he pulled out my phone and my wallet and my keys, and it was just like, really. Um, anyway, they left without saying much,
That's interesting.
and I'm like,
What do you think they were angling at there? You think they were trying to like set up a gringo for some kind of bribe money, some kind of like what was the
maybe, but I'm just like, you guys are, you must be fresh or stupid because we're not like we're both wearing like floral print shirts. My buddy had like two beers. I didn't drink at all. And I'm like, you could totally slam some gringos, like way more
yeah
easily than you
that
can slam us.
oh, okay, yeah, right, because you guys like speak Spanish and stuff, but like what
Mm-hmm.
do you think they were sincere? Do you think they suspected something of you? Do you think it was like completely bullshit and they were trying to set somebody up? Like what? But for what though? Like
Or what, right?
if
And
they
then, nah. I think it's like they get to exert some power and they're probably also like just frazzled from their job. I don't imagine being a police officer in Mexico City is easy. So they're probably just like strung out from some violent crime that they had to deal with 6 or 8 months ago, and they're still riding that like adrenaline wave. And they're like, "Oh, look, two guys walking home. Let's see if they have drugs." Very bizarre.
I guess, yeah, I guess there probably is a large contingency of like gringos who come down to party and like they probably do have drugs and it's probably just like an easy sting, because they're looking
For
for,
sure. But on
because
like Wednesday night at 10:30,
with
no.
floral shirts.
Yeah. I mean, come on.
Oh shit, I gotta
So
silence my phone 1 sec. All right, so
busy bee.
I forgot to do that. All right, so the subject of today's episode. What is it, Eric?
It's romance
Is it is it romance? Why is that? Why is it romance?
because that's a theme that we speak about privately, maybe more than any other theme.
That's probably correct. That's probably correct. When that's the first thing I think of whenever you send me these field girls. I think of romance.
Oh no. Oh no.
should we edit that part out?
No, no, no.
I know.
Um, so that might be a good entry point. Um, I was listening to Tim Dillon last night, as I usually do before I fall asleep, and
The relaxing segment of Tim Dillon.
he's just screaming about some obscene government decision. Um, but he said in a couple shows and interviews that you know, for the convenience that technology offers, it's also flattening people. It's making them dull, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because,
We've said before
you
that
know,
it's kind of scary because, the COVID lockdowns, that's also a recurring theme in our discussions. But
uh-huh.
one of the things we've said before is like, we have all this technology and it's like, look at all the amazing shit it enables. But like at the same time, the COVID lockdowns could not have happened in 1999 like they did. They could People just wouldn't have accepted it. And so it was kind of scary, like this realization that's like, oh shit, like we, you know, what have we become? What have we done? Yeah, life might be more convenient. We might have a lot more things at our fingertips, but it's like, look at what that has enabled. It's like enabled the best and the worst. And, but that's kind of an aside from romance, I guess, but I thought it was interesting.
Well, maybe it's similar because it's like I think romance entails some mystery and
Okay.
novelty. And right, when everyone's subjected to similar things, whether that's an algorithm or an expected lifestyle change like the lockdowns bring, it conditions people equally, and then I don't think they're able to engage you know, with each other like I don't want to say organically, but something like that, you know,
Is that
organic.
so? Romance is organic?
I think romance is organic. Romance is like, there are like some plants that grow with like really predictable structure, like an oak tree. If you give it enough space, it's going to be this like voluptuous,
Yes.
towering.
Tall.
That's like beautiful, but that's not romantic, I don't think. Romantic's more like a vine, a tropical vine,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I feel that. Vining.
Yeah,
I'd like to vine right now.
you like to get your tendrils out,
Yeah. And just
and
and
just
just cling and grip. I like grippy. Um
grippy.
mm,
Yes.
um Here's an interesting premise that I was kind of contemplating. So romance is it's many things. It's like obviously we hear the word, the first thing we think of is um partner, lusty romance. We think of, someone to be with. But there's also romantic, like, taking a trip to Italy. There's also, and I thought that was kind of, it seems particularly relevant for us now because of my life, my personal relationships, particularly a certain personal relationship. Romance seems relevant to me, but also you are kind of like the other kind of romance where you're like traveling around right now. You're going to new places. Uh, you're going to Spain. Um, you're in Mexico City. You're getting arrested for having drugs.
For
Yeah.
wearing a floral print shirt.
Yeah. Um, and I was thinking also about how a conversation we had before about how we ask it's like when we're looking for company in women, um, this conversation we had about like Venice and like can you imagine her? Can you imagine her on a gondola in Venice with you?
Hmm.
Remember that?
Yes.
And how like that was actually a really important question. Like that somehow I formulated that in my mind that like when I'm asking myself if this is company I would like to keep, I often think, okay, now envision her on a gondola in Venice. And if she's like ridiculous and embarrassing and obnoxious it's like, no, you're out. And that
She's like, wait, I need to record this on TikTok.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't think that, like, there are people that make videos for social media that are really cool and interesting and stuff. There is a way to, it's like Bald and Bankrupt. It's like you've seen. I've shown you Bald and Bankrupt, right?
Yes,
It's like he can do that and be fucking cool doing it.
he can.
Yes.
More so the others.
But
The
but
look
I
at me.
I guess it's at that moment that those two like sort of romances become like one and the same, and um maybe I don't know. I'm trying to like, are they actually that distinct from each other? Maybe not.
I don't think they're. I don't think they're that different. I think it's more. I mean, romance entails beauty too, and like some aesthetic.
Right,
You
right,
know.
right. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that you know the the places we think of as romantic, even if we're there alone, like Rome, for instance, are chock full of, like, if you actually look around, the architecture and it's very like um it's kind of erotic, it's very
Mm,
elegant and
it's elegant.
yeah, in
Yeah.
in in the same way that like a body can be elegant almost.
And so there are certain places that exude this elegance and are therefore romantic.
Is Mexico City one of those places?
Certain parts, certainly. And it's like why, you know, like
I
where we
thought
stayed.
I certainly felt that way about that fountain. You should go back to in the park at
Oh, and
Bosque something something.
Bosque de Chapultepec.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that fountain
yeah.
was beautiful and romantic, and I
But
photographed.
why? Why is Rome romantic and, you know, I don't know, Denver, Colorado
It's
not,
not.
you
It's
know?
really
I
not.
mean, both are built up, both have infrastructure and plenty of wealth, you know. Is there something about the like antiquity of it, the fact that it's been around for longer? Is it, you know what I mean? And similarly with women, like I've known beautiful women that aren't romantic, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, me too.
They bring their laptops to movie nights and assume
I
everybody's fine with,
yeah, yeah.
oh,
I'm clacking away. Well, oh, I hope you don't
oh,
mind. It's like, oh, why would I mind? It's just you
no, of course.
clacking away on a bright screen while we're trying to focus on a movie.
Unbelievable.
I feel I know she'll never watch this, so I guess that's fine. But I
Oh,
won't name any specific names, but
mm,
that is a true story.
oh,
Um, yeah, some people. What is it? Where do we learn that from? Why is it that some people seem just like they speak in poetry, and some people, like, you can be in Venice with them and they'll be clacking away on a laptop and just not get it, Um,
indeed.
what? Where does that come from? Is that taught by parents? I think it. I mean, I think it has a lot to do with art and study of like um, art, study of um, art history. I don't know how else to phrase it.
Yeah, like a familiarity with cultural elements, you know, like this jazz bar I was at last night it was very romantic, you know. I
It
mean,
okay.
visually it
How?
was enticing. It was like dimly lit, warm lighting. It was small, right? It was intimate,
Hmm.
and it was like Cuban jazz.
I
So
was gonna
there's,
say, what is Mexico City jazz like?
yeah,
What's its
it's
unique
like
flavor?
it's Cuban. They've got maracas and other percussive
Were
instruments
were
to
there
kind of.
Cubans playing? Were they Cuban immigrants? Was it?
There as far as I heard, there was one Cuban part of the band. He was the drummer, and he had his congas and his shakers, and then they had um a man named Donnie come up and sing for two songs, kind of as like a guest musician. So, yeah, that was certainly very romantic. On the contrary, um, going to a bar
Hmm.
2 nights ago, like your run of the mill. We got cocktails, we got mostly beer. Um, there was like white lighting, reggaeton playing.
Oh
It was like
god, that is not
not
romantic.
romantic.
Yeah. Ah.
Like, mm-mm. In the former, we were able to relax, and
Mhm.
the latter, we were not. So I think, as with art and architecture and beauty in these places and these people, like I think romance lets you relax somehow.
But it's stimulating too. It's interesting. It's almost like this yogic balance romance
Mm,
that between like because it's stimulating. It's like the most stimulating thing. But at the same time,
yeah,
it's not like it's calming at the same time.
yeah.
I think that's what it is. It's almost like a yin yang kind of balance energy where it's learning to
Mm,
be where it's learning to be exciting and um you know but not to the point of obnoxiousness. Exciting in exactly the right doses. You know, because I don't know. I'm not as interested. Like as I've grown, as I've evolved, it's like I used to be more of like a fiend, more of like just like looking for a fuck. Looking for like
uh-huh.
looking for whatever that maximum stimulation and it doesn't interest me as much as it used to. I'm more
No.
like, who's gonna feed me a mango? Who's gonna feed me some
Uh-huh.
mango? But while stimulating me, so that I've got the energy. So I've got the energy, and I don't just get exhausted and annoyed and sick of this experience quickly. I think that there's an element of like awareness of there's an element to romance of like awareness to the necessity of like rest and recuperation and like massages are romantic. um the the awareness of needing to relaxation and that yeah it's not 150 fucking percent isn't good all the time. I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. I might need you to help, but
What comes to mind is engrossing fiction, right?
yeah.
Like, I don't know if I've read
Stories,
too
yeah.
many,
Stories can be
yeah,
romantic for sure.
but like the stories where like you're interested and you're curious about it, and it's like there are cliffhangers and there are questions unanswered, but also like it keeps you reading, it keeps you engaged, it keeps you going. And so um similarly with people, like people who have stories about the travels, the adventures that they've undertaken. It's very romantic because there's this like encounter with the unknown, which can be kind of off-putting, but then by their merit and effort, they're able to make sense of it and communicate it. So like
And
they go out,
translate, yeah.
yeah, they're able to like traverse the frontier and then come back and share something valuable with the tribe, right?
I think that's why, romantic classical idea of romance is like the cowboy, the Wild West, the
Yeah.
pioneer, and
The sailor.
yeah, sailor coming back from. There's that line in Mad Men. What's the difference between a husband coming home from work and a sailor about 10,000 volts? Remember that scene? Do you remember that scene?
Yeah.
When his neighbor, whose wife he's fucking his neighbor's wife, and his neighbor comes to visit him at work, and like, and he said something like, "Oh, I was just hoping." The neighbor implies that, oh shit, I was hoping you were dumb but turns out you're really smart. That's a pretty bad paraphrasing of the line, but
That's
Mad
the
Men.
difference is 10,000 volts.
The difference
Yeah.
is 10,000 volts. Yeah. Because Don they're talking about using the word love in an ad, and Don being like this brilliant ad man, but at the same time like kind of sentimental, even though he's very sentimental, even though he's not. He's sentimental in theory, but like in practice, he's imperfect.
Mhm.
And and they're them being advertisers are just like, well, let's just make people in the ad say they love this thing, then people will want it. And Don's like, well, then words just, if we just, oh, I love my oven, I love my chair, I love my table, like if you just use it like that, then it doesn't mean anything.
Rightfully so. Yeah. I think there's some element of like of risk in romance too,
Oh, for sure.
because like it does make you nervous. It does make you, you know, I think most people would agree that romance might bring like butterflies in their stomach to mind.
Yeah, yeah.
There's some possibility that like it won't work,
Yeah, well,
that
right, because it's like the more excited you get, the more potential you have to be let down,
yeah,
And the
so risk.
and that's like physiologically true as well. Isn't it wild that like our most sensitive parts, it's like our most sensitive parts are our most sensitive parts, which what I'm getting at is like the parts that have the most potential to be for pleasure also have the most potential for pain. And there's
Right.
no way around that. There's no like getting one without the other.
There's no free lunch.
There's no invention that we can concoct that will just like, you take a numbing agent and you lose both pain and pleasure. It's
On the contrary, um, I think that's why I've been so fascinated with psychedelics is because they make your sensitive parts more
yeah,
sensitive,
they
or
make
at least
everything
they
more
have the
sensitive.
capacity
Yeah.
to,
I think
right?
that's yeah, and I think that's why a lot of people don't like them because they're in a state of quiet desperation and they're trying to numb their pain, and because they don't have because they don't feel anything pleasurable,
Yeah.
all they have is pain, and so they take a psychedelic and frankly this is something that annoys me is that in the modern age where psychedelics are becoming normalized, it's like suddenly all over Instagram and Facebook I'm seeing ads and it's just like heals your depression, heals your this, heals your, you know what I mean? And it's just like everyone's trying
Sure.
to be the next guru marketer or psychedelic guru marketer. And
All for naught.
I mean, I do think they have healing potential for certain, but I think people who are accustomed to like painkillers and opiates and alcohol and these kinds of things they know of as drugs, if you're telling them that hey, here's another drug. I think they're going to potentially have a frightful experience with psychedelics when suddenly they're confronted with the antithesis to what they're used to when they hear the word drugs, which is numbing, and they
Right.
get like suddenly put in a state where all they can think about is their trauma.
For
uh,
better or worse, if they're
right.
equipped, um, then fine.
Yeah.
There's this that's so interesting. This there's an article that I read um like 4 or 5 years ago. I think it's called Serotonin and Brain Function, A Tale of Two Receptors by um the author is Dr. Carhart Harris, and he's been a psychedelic pioneer in so many ways. I think he's in Oxford. Anyway, he was just describing how if you look at psilocybin or LSD, for instance, compared to your typical SSRI, they both engage serotonin signaling in the nervous system. The psilocybin and LSD will um, like engage the brain and so that it takes in more as we're talking about. Um, right? So there's not like as much moderation on
Ah.
sensory
Mm-hmm,
gating.
mm-hmm.
And so obviously, right, if one's if one is avoiding underlying issues, those are going to be very apparent, which can ultimately result in healing and reconciliation. On the other hand, the SSRIs do the opposite. They make everything flat.
Flat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
That is what I've observed in personal relationships to people that I've seen go from not medicated to medicated, is that they just become very plainer.
yeah. So, how, apart from consuming said chemicals, how can we become or cultivate the capacity for romance? You know,
I was going to be my next question. Are psychedelics romantic?
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, they they're sensual, they're ineffable, they're very risky, you know.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like weird because they're not, but they are. They're. I think it was Terrence McKenna or something. May someone said that they can't kill you; they'll just make you feel like you're dying.
totally dismembered,
Yeah.
um, cut to pieces at times, but then, it's like you come through that, like the hero leaving the comfort of home and setting out on the adventure and confronting the dragon, and you come back and it's like, well, I lived through that,
Yeah, I
you know.
do. I do feel like, and I've said this before, the term, because I've described this to a lot of people doing what I do who haven't ever taken psychedelics. So ask me about them, and I think that trip is a really appropriate term. I don't know how it came to be the term that we use to describe like what's the word for like the study of language?
Linguistics maybe.
Yeah, like linguistically, I wonder how it happened, but like it's amazing how accurate that term is because it's like I've said to people, it's like a trip. It's like you might take a trip to Mexico and there will be elements of it that are really strange and bizarre and you don't understand and like it'll be difficult. There'll be a time when you're on the plane. You have to get on the plane, to get to Mexico, you have to get on the plane. And the part on the plane is, there might be a crying baby a seat behind you and you'll be feeling confined and you'll be feeling like, oh God, what am I doing? This is how, yeah. But then when you and there will be lots of moments like that, and you'll first arrive, and there will be some asshole who tries to scam you, and there will be some cop who asks if you have drugs, you know. And there will be a lot of moments where you're out of sorts and out of order and not sure what's going on. And but then there will be like other moments where you like come across this beautiful fountain, and it's like I never dreamt of this. In my wildest dreams, I never imagined like this was possible. You'll come across the Aztec sunstone, you know, you'll go see it
Yeah.
and stand in front of it, in front of this like ancient artifact that these modern people have felt compelled to preserve. And you'll be, you know, you'll be standing next to someone from like China who came all the way from fucking China to see this. And like in that moment, like you would never otherwise meet if you hadn't taken this trip. And you can't, you know, you can't communicate in any traditional sense that you had before, that you like are familiar with. But there will be like moments where you feel something incredible that you never would have otherwise felt. And in this unifying kind of like energy, it's almost like the force that binds in the Hyperion series, you know. It's like I feel like that's what Dan Simmons was getting at, because that's what it was. It was love, you know, ultimately.
And then for the people who don't risk and don't travel, or because I do feel like there are people who take psychedelics or travel, and yet it's like for them, tripping means like, you know, they're sitting in their apartment with three of their bros and they're like, dude, whoa, check out this glass. Like it's, you know, and there's no interiority to it. There's no
Well, I
contemplation.
think there is.
Um,
There might not be. They might not be able to express that, but I don't think you can take psychedelics and not have like some kind of interior exploration. They might. It might just be the fact that my hope is that they're getting there. You know, my hope is that
for
they're
sure.
inexperienced, and that might be like the baby steps.
Yeah, and the dose matters a lot
Mm-hmm.
too. You know, it's like the difference between traveling an hour away from your hometown and 10 hours away, you know, like things are going to change pretty dramatically. Both have their value,
Yeah,
but
there's definitely something inherently romantic about distance, about like something, the further
mm,
away it is, the further you travel, the more romantic, the more mysterious and interesting. And
the deeper you trip,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So to cultivate, it's like, I think there's also this element of, and I talked to some friends about this, and maybe we've gone over this, but um, how to classify thought and planning in that there's like rationality, which everyone understands, you know. Um, there's irrationality, which is just kind of nonsensical. And then there's non-rationality, which I don't think has entered the lexicon, but I would say that romance falls under non-rational, where it's like you could have all of the comforts necessary to feel, you know, maybe not satisfied, but taken care of, built up around you, and then decide to trip,
Mm-hmm.
to voyage, you
Yeah.
know, and from a rational perspective, it's like, well, why would you take that risk? You know,
Mm-hmm.
like everything's set, and then the answer might be something like, you know, well, there's lots of opportunity on the frontier that you can't know until you encounter it, you know, and you know, so similarly with selecting partner, like I know it's maybe more popular to kind of make a list of desires and
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 wait
qualifiers
and wait for the non-existent entity to come and fill that. Yeah,
and
yeah.
not engage, you know, until that happens. But then you try and rent a house for a friend in Mexico where you just moved, and it turns out the young lady who's renting the home is like this brilliant, gifted dancer and
Oh, that's how
Pilates
that happened.
instructor and artist, and
Which friend were you renting a house for?
someone I had met in Guatemala, a Canadian lady who wanted to check it out. And yeah, so she wanted to come visit me in Guanajuato for a month and check out the town and see if it was a better spot for her. And so she looked for spots on Craigslist of all places. And yeah, I got there to check it out before she came, and I met Frida Hanat, the the
Ooh,
most romantic woman I'd ever met in my life. And yeah,
and it
things
scared you. It
changed.
scared you a little bit
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because you saw how easily it could like, distract you from all your other ambitions.
And it did. It was like having to take stimulants to keep up with her and not sleeping and not but the romance, like
Oh,
the going out at night,
the adventure, the mystery, the
the
danger,
intrigue.
the sweet danger. That's kind of what sweet danger is about. It's kind of this like
Mm.
cheeky, tongue-in-cheek, romantic. But I don't know what else. What were you saying? You were on a fucking tear there. I think feel like I.
No, a tear in that, it's like, and then these people, these opportunities present themselves sometimes if you explore. And then it's like, are you going to choose to pursue it? Are you going to choose to indicate interest? And if you do, then it's like maybe you take a hike with this person up and sit on a little mountaintop above the town and kiss for hours while fireworks happen to be going off, and just like that, like how
Yeah.
could you have ever planned something like that? How could you have ever anticipated, you know, and then you remember that, right?
Yeah, spontaneity is romantic. I think that's why.
Yeah.
uh, You know, I think I've mentioned this to you before, but like there's times where I've thought about women and I've thought about certain ones and thought like, oh God, she would have all, as far as a partner goes, like a mother or something like that. It's like, yeah, she's secure, she's financially stable, she's this, that, like she's not ugly, she's even, like why, but yet I just don't feel anything around her. Like she'd take care of everything, the house, she wouldn't make a mess in the house. She's all these things I've thought about women before, and yet, like there are times, and not to say that all women who have their shit together are are dull or something. And there's no woman who is stable that I wouldn't feel that way about, because I think that recently I found a woman that is a lot all those things, and I do still feel that, like feel a lot for. But like there's what's the term you use, non-rationality.
Yeah.
There's women I found who, like, in all the rational metrics, they should qualify, and yet I just like the moment they're out of sight, it's like I forget they exist.
Hmm.
And then there's some
Yeah.
women who I can't stop thinking about. And
They're pulling you in.
yeah, eye contact is romantic. I really, really like eye contact. I think that's important. Um, how do you feel about that?
I agree because um, it's vulnerable, right? There's
Mm, eyes
there's
are.
something, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, there's so much you're sharing when you look someone in the eyes, and it's like exposing your secrets. You know, well, you might either it's like this, you might use this information to really please me or really hurt me. You know, and even if it's not literal information, it's not something that can be translated into speech. It's there.
Well, and you kind of, I mean, if you're gonna write somebody a text message and lie, it's so easy. But
Mm,
then you're looking somebody in the eye and you're like embodied in that moment and realize that like,
yeah. If someone's willing to
yeah,
look you that close in the eyes, it's definitely a like, okay, I either can trust you or you're like a trained fucking sociopath who's really good. Like, so,
yeah.
there is that, but, um,
Well, and I think
there
I
is,
think both have their place too. Like we've talked about, as far as work and like professional development is concerned, it's like you should schmooze and be sociopathic in some ways because that's just how the system works. It's not intimate, it's not romantic, it's the opposite. And so um it's all domain dependent, right? It's like are you looking at your lover or are you looking at, your acquaintance in business? And I think a lot of people get mixed up nowadays with this idea of like, well, like passion, for instance, it's like there's something really romantic, at least there was before, about like finding, you know, your calling, let's say, you know, which is a really old Christian idea, and it's not necessarily what we take it to mean um, in the contemporary culture, but nonetheless, it's like I just need to find what fills me up,
mm,
and like do that. And maybe there's something to that, and maybe
I
some
think
people
that's
figure that
true.
out. But overwhelmingly, it's like, no, like work is not romantic at all. And if you
Yeah.
try and, you know, if you try and mix those two domains, I mean, I think people just become heartbroken, like because they're not they're not the same thing and they shouldn't be taken as equivalent or
I think they can be
interchangeable.
the same thing. I don't know if they have to be the same thing. I think, yeah, um, it's probably caused a lot of, Disney movies and the idea of, the happily ever after, finding that perfect situation has probably led a lot of people to have unrealistic expectations that have led them to disappointment and internal tragedy. But I don't know. I think that like there's people who do what we're doing right now for a living, and I feel like that's pretty fucking awesome. They have these conversations and they make $100 million from it, and then they get to go like, you
Well,
know travel to Spain whenever they feel like it, and because and so like I think I don't think we should ever. I think that's one of those things where it's like it is a theoretical perfection that should be aspired to, but can't be like expected. It can't be. It shouldn't make or break us because it's purely theoretical. It's a theoretical perfection which doesn't actually exist. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep it, bear it in mind when we, in terms of how we poise ourselves in the world and how we design our lives. We should be conscious of that stuff, but not let its failure to acquire, or our failure to immediately sort of match our failure of our own lives to immediately match that make us feel like a failure.
Hmm. It's like an aspiration more than anything, and um, I don't know. I feel like in Western culture at least, like we could do more with like investing more time in the romantic and in the leisurely, because I think those happy accidents happen when when we do that. It's not a matter of
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah. I think that's a big difference between like American work culture and like European slash Latin American work cultures. It's just like this idea that of just like I don't know, I feel like they have a much better sense of like the value of leisure, um, whereas we're like obsessed with service. You know, obsessed with maximizing efficient service,
mhm.
and um,
I during my explorations in the world of pornography as well, I've just noticed a trend, like depending on where it's produced, there's just such a different,
yeah, that's true.
right? Like
Yeah.
Latin American pornography has so much more um, sazon, like
What is that?
heat,
Interesting. Because I have not
flavor.
watched a lot of Latin American porn.
It just seems like they're enjoying it. Um, Whereas in the US, it's just like it's about service, it's about performance, it's about
Yeah,
like, you know, how hard can you pump?
yeah, yeah, yeah. How
You
many,
know?
how many different positions can you do? You know.
Uh-huh. Yeah, in 1 minute, go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's just, yeah, it's something else. It's something else. And right, that's reflected not only in the pornography, but maybe in the architecture, the built environment, the artistic sphere as well. Like, I mean, I don't go to art museums like frequently, but spending time in like the Museum of Anthropology here in Mexico and just seeing the works that were produced by cultures that like certainly did have a space for leisure versus the Museum of Contemporary Art in whatever city in the United States. I mean, just there's such a different quality. I I think the best example of that is the installation outside of the Denver Art Museum, right?
The big broom.
It's just it's a big dustpan.
Do you think
It's
that
like
they were
30, 40
trolling?
feet tall.
You think that the artist was trolling when he made that? You think he was making a comment on the state of contemporary art?
It's so brilliant in that way, whether it was intentional or not. It's like, yeah, like somebody got commission to build this giant dustpan and
Mm-hmm.
broom,
Mm-hmm.
hand broom and trash, and it's like this metal painted sculpture and
It's
it's
kind of a
it's
cool sculpture. I
massive,
like it.
you know.
I like that sculpture a lot more than most. I don't know, most things that you see in a contemporary art museum. It's
Certainly.
huge though.
And that's
It's
like,
like
yeah.
20 feet tall. Yeah.
So that speaks to just like, yeah, I mean, we need to explain that in comparison to the
Who
sunstone.
what art do you find romantic?
I mean, I don't have the vocabulary to explain or like qualify different styles of art, but for architecture, I mean, Art Deco and Rococo and um, I think the Spaniards are just like from the Italians more than anything, the colonial style and something about like just it's earthen, it's at a human scale,
Mm-hmm.
the balconies, the terracotta roofing, and
It's curvy, it's
yeah.
curvaceous. It's not glass and steel. It's like
Mm.
it's a lot of these structures almost like you can imagine yourself just like curling up, like being spooned by them, being spooned by the structure. Um,
Is it the most efficient way to build a building? Absolutely not,
right,
right?
right.
That's more beams,
Yeah.
uh, you know, glass, sheet metal, whatever, as you said. But it's like, which will people invest money into restoring after hundreds of
Yeah.
years,
So you got to go to the that famous church in Barcelona. Is it a church? Gaudi? I can't think of the I can't I'm
Yeah,
blanking on the name now, but it's Gaudi, right? Who was the architect?
I really don't know, but that would certainly be worth checking
Sagrada
out.
Familia. Yeah.
Oh, that's in Barcelona. Yeah, yeah. Oh, what a trip. Yeah, the pursuit of romance. It's like, why not just live in the super efficient studio and, you know, like eat out every day and, it's like, no, have your space, cook your soup, take your time, hang your photography up. Um,
And meet beautiful women who appreciate that, or men, or whoever
yeah,
whoever you the listener prefer, as
yeah.
long as they're romantic. You know.
And I think you meet romantic people in romantic places too. It's like maybe not all of the time, but a jazz bar compared to a sports bar, it's like I think you're more likely to encounter the people you want to meet in the former, you
Oh.
know.
Yeah, I mean, if romance is your objective,
Certainly.
sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes you just want to fucking wrestle and sweat with the boys.
With the boys. Oh,
Except,
chicken wing sweats.
and by wrestle I mean mentally wrestle over a chessboard. I've been playing
Yeah.
a shitload of chess lately.
Yeah.
I've been going to chess clubs, but our chess
Nice.
not the most romantic places, but that's okay.
Well, but I mean, good on you. You know.
Yeah, yeah, it's been fun. It's been worth my while. I think keeping sharp, keeping I love. There's something really enjoyable about just like hanging out with the guys and like shit talking over a challenge, challenging each other, like you battling
Hmm.
and sweating, and because I literally sweat when I play a difficult game of chess.
You do.
Yes, yes,
No kidding.
but
That's great.
you
You're
don't.
into it.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I really am.
Fantastic.
What do you think?
Hmm. I
It's
mean,
in
I
it's
feel satisfied.
you've
What do
seen.
you think?
Yeah, I mean we've been recording. I'm for let's see, what time is it? Yeah, we've been recording for about an hour.
Yeah.
So I guess that's probably the attention span that we're going for at this point in time anyway. So
Until we get
should
Tim
we,
Dillon on.
yeah, what next episode we're talking about um what would the subject be if we had Tim Dillon on?
Oh man. I just want him to go off,
Yeah.
Like I just want him to go off.
Yeah. To any of our listeners, who haven't heard of Tim Dillon.
Start with A Serene Retreat. I think it's episode 238 on his podcast.
That's a fucking classic. That is
Let's see.
so good. I just want fill a kiddie pool up with baked beans and then finger fuck each other in it.
Is it too much to suggest that we get a
actual drop? Is that disrespectful? Okay.
295, A Serene Retreat. Yeah.
Yeah, I introduced Eric to Tim Dillon, and he's never been the same since.
No, my life is demonstrably better. I can't thank you enough. Oh.
So that seems like an appropriate way to end an episode about romance, does it not?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, see you later.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Eric.